everybody. It's Phil from Think, Engage, Thrive for another weekly call with bringing you great entrepreneurs from all around the world. And tonight we have an entrepreneur who's having trouble connecting. So we not sure what the issue is, but hopefully they'll be able to figure it out so they can get on. But we were going to have Terresa Zimmerman on. She's an entrepreneur, a podcast founder, an author, a host, an advisor, a mentor for business owners. She's traveled the world for decades. Actually, if you remember, we had Jim James on, who was just a phenomenal guest. And he was in Asia for quite some time, Hong Kong, etc. And she actually worked with him. She was in, and here she comes, but she was in Hong Kong with him and places like that. But she's worked for Fiserv, QUALCOMM, NVIDIA, just a world of experience. But more importantly, she's created her own men's underwear brand. So, of course, obviously, everybody says, and Jim did the same thing on his show. He said, let's talk about how she gets into men's underwear, but it's called Wood Underwear. So it's a great brand. And let's talk to her a little bit about what she's done, how she's gotten there. Hi, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh goodness, can you see me?
I can see you now.
Oh, so sorry. How stressful. I even allowed a lot more time. Google Chrome did not love me tonight. Thank you for the great introduction, and thank you for having me and for your patience. Everybody, thank you for your patience.
Just a little bit of a little bit of technical difficulties, but that stuff happens.
Nothing like a little stress to start a show, right?
Nothing like a little stress to start a show. There's no question about it.
Oh my goodness!
Dogs barking. I've got technology problems. So it's a fun night.
There you go. Well, I'm sorry I added to it, but I'm very happy to talk to you about how long I've been trying to get into men's underwear.
I think that's a great conversation. Why don't we start out with that? Let's take it all the way back, and why don't you go through a little bit of your history and then how you got into deciding to try and get into men's underwear.
Yeah, well, you started to talk about our connection with Jim. When I knew Jim, I was working in consulting, brand consulting, marketing consulting, PR consulting, all over the world. And, I had a progression of that. And at some point I kind of said, I want to start working on my projects, because when you're a consultant, you're always working on everybody else's projects.
Exactly.
And some of which you're not even allowed to talk about. And I'm sure, you've had those situations as well. But so I did a whole bunch of research and said, okay, what can I do? I want a product-based business. I don't want to, continue in services, because that would just mean I'm working on somebody else's stuff all the time. And so I looked at everything. I looked at franchises. I looked at buying a gift store in Sandpoint, Idaho. I looked at an HVAC company. There was a wine and chocolate store around the corner from where I lived that was trying to sell itself. I thought, oh, well, why not? Wine and chocolate. I love it.
Oh, there you go.
And then, I kind of put out feelers and just kind of told everybody that this is what I'm doing. I mean, and I think as you do, when you start talking to people, stuff comes back to you that you never would have expected. And so I ended up doing some collaborations with some folks in outside the United States. And one of them was underwear. And originally it was just kind of going to be a, hey, you guys do this and I'll, sell it. And then my husband got a prototype and he's like, oh my God, you have to do this. Men have nothing. And I ignored him for about 3 months. And meanwhile, these guys that I was collaborating with are like, yeah, we're not going to do it. And I'm like, well, guess what? I am. So it kind of just started that way. But when he harassed me enough, I'm like, well, how hard can it be to go sell a few pair of underwear? And the answer to that is hard.
Yeah.
But it kind of just started me off on this journey in 2011, kind of the midpoint of 2011, and the prototype that was manufactured is the same manufacturer I went out and did my production with. And being in the brand and marketing area, I focused the November, December and trying to get images and brochures and whatever I thought I needed. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I just assumed you needed pictures. So I had this container full of underwear coming to me, and I didn't even know how I was going to get it from a ship to wherever I was going to put it. I mean, I had planned that much. In my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I'll figure out where the port is. I'll figure out how to get it. I'll take it to a storage depot, and I'll, spend my nights and weekends, hopefully packing up underwear and dropping it at the post office. And I fortunately had, smarter people around me that said, yeah, Teresa, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And that again was a case where I just kind of put it out there and I said, hey, everybody, in my own personal Rolodex, and said, here's what I'm going to do starting like next week, January 1, my, New Year's new venture. I'm going to be selling men's underwear and it's landing. And when I figure out how to post it, please support me. And a friend called, and he was in logistics, 3PL logistics. And he said, Teresa, you're definitely not doing that. And here's what I can do for you. And he taught me a whole new vocabulary of, logistics acronyms and jargon. Yeah. And that's kind of how it started.
I was going to say, that's not such it's not so easy as to, it comes in the port, I'll go and pick it up, I'll put it in the truck and I'll bring it to, it doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I would have figured it out for sure, but thank goodness I didn't have to figure that out by myself. And so he had a little tiny bit of warehouse space in the business he was in that he could play with smaller brands. And so I was one of those brands that got selected, and I was introduced to the world of pick and pack and 3PL and all of that. So it was great
to have a friend in that world.
Yeah. Yes.
That is a very difficult and convoluted world.
But it's crazy. And, one of the things that you don't think about as an entrepreneur, especially with a product entrepreneur, especially, and I'm sure you have these stories as well, based on your background, but you don't understand that a typhoon in the Southeast Asian seas can affect your tiny little product, in the United States, affect you getting it. You don't understand that, Apple introduces a new iPhone and they can buy out from under you all of your, logistics reservations. I mean, you just don't, how does a, well, this happened twice, ship getting stuck in canals affect whether or not you get your product from India. It's wild, and it's amazing what affects you, in that arena.
I have a friend in logistics, and obviously everybody that I know that sells on Amazon, everybody brings in product. But what I didn't realize was that I don't know if this is the real number, the accurate number, but something like 10% of the containers on a ship coming across fall off the ship in the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
And they can't retrieve them because by the time they get to them, they sink to the bottom. And they've actually, it's actually a thing now where it's turned into coral reefs and divers go down. But yeah, it's amazing. They get caught in a storm and those containers go flying off, and it could be your product.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Logistics is an art form. It is not easy. And everybody thinks if you're bringing something in by ship that it should take 30 days. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes 90 days, 120 days. We had razors. We had razors going from China, from Shanghai or Hong Kong to Europe to a port in I can't remember where, but it took forever. It took almost 90 days, and we just couldn't understand it. And then it has to clear customs, and then it has to go through all these pieces, and it's 120
Yeah.
days before it's ready to sell. And
Yep.
everybody's calling, going, "When is it ready? When is it ready?" And
Right. And that's if they'll still take it, right? Because they give you cancel date sometimes. I mean, usually you can set expectation and avoid those. But yeah, I mean, some big companies will cancel their
oh
PO.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what I wasn't even sure what I was gonna get out of this container. I mean, it could have been bags of sand for all I knew. I mean, really, how do you know? Because people are like, oh, well, you have somebody on that end, they're checking, inspecting to make sure that what's on the ship is what you ordered. I'm like, no, I don't. I can't do that. I've got $3 to my name. I can't do that. Um, so, they could have packed that thing with anything and you prepay them.
Right,
So yeah, it's like,
right.
oh,
And you
there's no
prepaid it.
recourse. I
Yeah,
mean,
you prepay the freight, you prepay everything.
right, right. Yeah, everybody gets paid but you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
so it's pretty funny. But yeah, the timing is crazy. I mean, I had a situation recently. I brought in things by air in it was this spring, April-ish, and they landed in LA, which is where my warehouse is located. So it's local and 45 days
Just to clear it.
to clear it. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But,
It
those the backups at the port affect everybody.
Oh, yeah. But it's not just that. I mean, it's when somebody's gonna get to it, if they wanna get to it, and, when we did fashion, a couple of fashion brands on HSN early on, and, um, we were bringing stuff, and we had to fly things in just to meet some deadlines, and not only is that costly, but it's sort of a pain in the neck
Right.
because you think it's gonna be really fast and efficient, and it's not.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, I'm manufacturing in India right now. I started out in China, and I am bringing things in by air from India because it takes such a long time to get from India to here. I mean, China. So with my warehouse on the Pacific side, most ports in China coming to the US, especially prior to COVID, it slowed down a little bit. I mean, you could get some stuff in 6 or 7 days by boat, at least landed. You may not have received it, but it's phenomenal how fast, and how many containers were going across
Yeah.
from, say, Shanghai to LA. And so that was really kind of cool. And then COVID hit and it slowed everything down that way. And I think the fastest I've seen now is like 14 or 15 days. But India's crazy. It's like 60 or 90 days by boat, and they're like, yeah, maybe. So
I've never seen 14 days by boat, but I'm just in a different world. I've never seen it, but I would love to get 14 or 21 days. I'd live with 30 days if we could do it. But
yeah,
even if we bring it into LA, it doesn't matter. It's
30 days door to door. That would be great.
yeah.
Yeah. If we could, have some consistency around it, plus or minus a couple days, that'd be great. Yeah.
The killer to me was during COVID. One of our clients was Energizer, which owns Schick and some other brands. And during COVID, here's a multi-billion-dollar company. They manufacture in the US, but they bring components in from around the world. And one of them is steel, which they bring in from Sweden. And they couldn't bring in steel. They couldn't get enough. They couldn't clear it. Boats were sitting out in the ports with steel to make razors, and they couldn't get it off. And I'm thinking to myself, here's this multi-billion-dollar company, and they have the same problems I have.
Yeah. And their
These
production line is completely shut down because they can't get the raw materials in time. Yeah. In the place they need to be.
And
Yeah.
their guys are on the phone calling, going, I need this, and they can't clear.
Right.
It's
Right.
amazing to me, but
Oof. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's the logistics part of it has been eye-opening for sure. And yeah, I mean, every year it's been something. As soon as I think I've got it figured out, it's, watch out, something else is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think you ever have it figured out. And then once you get all that, then you have to handle the pick, pack, and ship to the consumer and the end user, and you've got to, deal with all that. And yeah, then the fun just starts. As soon as you
Yeah.
get the product in, that's when the fun begins.
Yes. 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 Love our customers.
Are you selling mostly to retailers, or are
So
you selling
I'm a
direct to
wholesale
consumer?
model. Yeah. So I would say today we're probably 80% wholesale. It varies a little bit, where we've gone up and down. Certainly COVID was more online, because a lot of the 3PLs, and certainly my 3PL was still open because they also sold some things that were considered, I guess, important enough to consider their business openable.
Yeah.
Um, and so I got to keep my ecom stuff going, but I'm primarily a wholesale model, and that's where my heart is our main street businesses and our independent retail stores, and but it's got to be both, because we're small to this day, so it's you've got to, in order to have a national presence, you've got to sell ecom. I do my best not to compete with my customers, though, my wholesale customers. So, but that's at the whim of the customer, the end
That
customer.
that brings challenges unto itself, because you've got to have salespeople out there. You've got to have somebody touching it. How do you do that? I mean, is it all independent salespeople that are commissioned,
Oh,
or are you
goodness.
doing it yourself?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do it myself. Yeah. I mean, I love to talk to the my customers, the businesses that I sell to. Um, And so I've done a number of things. I thought, there was going to be this magic, button I could push when I started. I'm going to go down to the LA Market Center area, and I was going to walk into a showroom, and I was going to get them on board with what I was trying to do, and they were going to go out, and orders were going to come in.
And
So, oh, geez. So I went through a handful of those, because I don't know, I think that um I would do it differently than what I saw. So I would have phone banks. I would have people calling all the time. It's almost, I mean, as with anything, it's the people you get in front of you.
yeah,
And the showrooms I dealt with, absolutely, they had great reputations, so I'm not taking anything away from them, but you know they sell the stuff that is, the gravy in their pocket.
sure,
The little stuff is the last stuff that gets out of that comes out of a bag. A brand new brand is also really hard, and so you're not going to sell the hard stuff if you can sell the easy stuff.
sure,
And so that's kind of what I faced. Is it was really hard. Plus, there's a lot of passivity going on, I think, in that world, and maybe it's true with salespeople in general. If you're selling the stuff that's easy, then you can kind of sit back a little bit. But they they would take people who are coming in, as opposed to going and bringing people in. They would let the trade shows and the markets down there drive the traffic instead of creating the traffic. They would call people they already knew instead of trying to source people that they didn't know. And that's very insular, and that's very, very hard for a new brand to break into. So I didn't have success with that. And a lot of them don't travel either. There's a lot of independent retail out there that they don't go to trade shows. So you
right,
have to call them, or you have to go visit them. And traditionally, independent sales reps have been on the road to go visit stores, and there's a lot of them out there today.
sure.
It's kind of an aging community, but phone calls, phone calls are amazing. So phone. You can do stuff by text and email, and all this technology that's available to us after you've made the phone call or made the visit. But you got to be in front of people to
Oh,
get
yeah.
them to, it's a relationship business, and especially dealing with the independents. And and I think that's true of the big guys too. But you got to know people.
It's it it's absolutely true of no matter what you're doing, that it's all about relationship building. But I think that there's a big distinction between salesmen and order takers. And in
Yes.
my opinion, most of the people out there that call themselves salesmen are just order takers.
Yep.
And we had a, I had built this retail business up, um, specialty food back, early on, and I got bought. And I also built a website that was based on meals online. It was one of
Yeah.
the,
I saw that.
yeah, and we got acquired by Harris Teeter down by you, and Harris Teeter supermarkets, and I had to go and work there doing some things, but I wound up running the perishable side of the business, and the fresh side of the business. And there were brokers who came in that were in the office every day, and those guys, they were in the office every day for whatever reason. They'd make up reasons to come in and see the buyers or whatever, but the real reason that they came in was because they wanted to hear what was going on. What are the plans? What are things? Then they'd go out and they'd find a brand to bring in, and those guys were the people that could move the business forward for you, because they were bringing you new and exciting products. Then you
Right.
had order takers. You had guys that would come in from the UNFIs of the world with their little book and sit there and go, and just check off. And they call themselves sales, but they weren't sales. They weren't
Right.
doing anything to be proactive.
Yeah.
It frustrated me. But when I was on the other side, then, when we started Raw Beauty and we started to get into retail, we had all these brokers coming to us and saying, we'll get you here, we'll get you there, but they couldn't. They didn't have the relationships. So I always went and found brokers or sales organizations that had the relationship at a place, that were in the building every single day. If you're in Kroger, you're in Kroger, or if you're in, Ulta, you're in Ulta. You're not in Sephora every day, or guys at places like that. So, but there is a big difference, and I can understand your frustration with starting a fashion brand. We dabbled in fashion a little bit, and it was not easy. It's not an easy thing.
No, it's definitely not. And to your order taker salesperson thing, I had this gal. She was introduced to me by a gal that used to work for me, and she was disabled, so she needed to work from home. So she actually managed my CRM system. I use Salesforce, and so she would make sure that the data that went in there was good data, and she would make calls, and and in fact she took on trade show calls too. Anytime we go to a trade show, she could get through like 1,000 calls in a couple of weeks. It's crazy how many calls she got through. But by doing that, she ended up, people were like, oh yeah, Sabrina called, she did this, and I wanted to call and place an order. And uh so she got a couple of those call backs saying, hey, I got your phone call, yeah, let's walk through an order. And she would do that, no problem. If the second I called her a salesperson or told her that her activities were sales, she freaked out. So I'm like, she's calling on behalf of me, and she'll have any conversation with anybody, but do not call her a salesperson. But she made sales that were great. And
Why
people,
didn't you want to be called a salesperson?
yeah, she didn't want to be called a salesperson because that was too scary for her.
Uh,
Yeah. But it is that people thing, and understanding, what drives people, and how to utilize them and how to motivate them. And so, I let her do her thing, and she passed away a couple years ago, so she was with me for a very long time, and fabulous. But yeah, it's lots of order takers. I don't need order takers. I mean, technology is doing that for me just fine. So
yeah, I'm a horrible salesperson. I have to have people who do it, because I'm just terrible. I'm good at what we do, but I'm just I'm a terrible salesperson.
I'm guessing you're not giving yourself quite enough credit.
No, I'm really not good at it. I focus too much on solving the problem and going through the steps of how we're going to solve the problem
Right,
before I build that whole rapport of, tell me the pain points. I already saw the pain points. I know what your problem is. Here's how we fix it.
right,
People don't want to hear that. So
right. Yeah. Yeah.
but I work on
Well, I mean, we have to do an educational sale, so maybe you can sell underwear.
it.
We do have to train people why they should try a different pair of underwear, why they should entertain our brand, why they don't only just need one brand in their store, and what's the difference and all the reasons. So it's definitely an education sell, and education sells are hard and take a long time and lots of repetition. And I
Oh
tell the
yeah,
people who work with me, it's like we might be bored of this information, but everybody else is hearing it for the first time. So
yeah,
keep saying it. Repeat, repeat, repeat.
yeah. Rinse and repeat. I
Yeah.
had a friend who sold men's underwear on e-commerce only, and he built a huge business doing it. But he started out when he was young. He started out going to flea markets, and he found a source to get one of the brands like Fruit of the Loom or something, and he was selling in the flea markets and doing quite well. And then he realized he could be doing this online, and
Oh,
then he didn't want to sell branded because he knew that he was going to get into trouble for
yeah.
doing that. So he found a manufacturer, I believe in Mexico first, and then he wound up in Asia to manufacture it. But he started doing all these things, and it his biggest market was South America. His biggest
Wow.
Yeah, his biggest market were the countries in South America. It just exploded out of the website, and he
Yeah.
wound up building a website. He had 4 or 5 different languages on the website, and it was just men's underwear on e-commerce. And he couldn't believe how it exploded. But
That's wild. I mean, did he do some crazy promotion that I know you're famous for in order to do it? No, nothing like that.
he had these. He started out. I guess the manufacturer that he was working with, and this is going back probably 15, 20 years ago, he started they had these just wild designs and wild prints and just very European cut types of men's underwear.
Yeah.
And it just took off for some reason. It connected with a certain group of people, and it just started to explode from there, and he just rode the wave.
Wow. That's great. I mean, yeah, you get on one of those waves, ride it, ride it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing when you do hit when you do hit a nerve, right? I remember in the shaving business, everybody was going after men's razors, focused on price, and you know, you're getting ripped off by the big guys, yada yada. But Billy came along for women, and she focused on two things with that brand. One was no pink tax. She priced everything whatever men's was, and the second was body positivity, and
Nice.
it exploded. And I sat there going, because we were in the shaving business at the time, and we were selling women's razors, and we were priced appropriately, but it never dawned on me that there was this thing called a pink tax. I didn't know. My nobody ever said it to me. My daughters never said it because they didn't buy the product. My wife,
Right, right.
nobody ever said there was this pink tax or this
Yeah.
perceived pink tax. So but she blew it out of the water, and just those two things, and really spent very little on advertising. I'm sure it was a lot of work and all the things that she did. It certainly didn't come out of the gate and I am successful, but she was. I just thought it was great because of the way that they approached using social media at the time to get across those two concepts, and women
That's
just
great.
grabbed
Good
it.
for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
she got
The
acquired.
pink tax is real. The pink tax is real.
Yeah, no doubt about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it now. I didn't know it then. I was like, "What is she?"
Are your daughters older? Are they married? Are they?
And now they're older.
Yeah.
Now they're in I have 2 that are still in college, 2 that are just out of college, and
So you're soon going to be finding out about the wedding tax too. So anytime you put the word wedding in front of anything you go out and buy, there's a zero added.
you know, I
Call it a party and you're fine.
I talk to my wife about that all the time. I actually would be happy if we were having some weddings. I would like to have
Oh,
grandchildren, but
oh,
everybody is because all the kids are gone. You spend
yeah.
all this time with the kids in the house, and then they're gone, and now I'm left with all my dogs, and so which is, don't get me wrong, that's fun too, but
Yeah, dogs can be good company. I've got 2 Aussies.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I have a German Shorthair Pointer and a Great Pyrenees.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, big dogs. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Mine are big enough. They're both 70 pounds. They boss me around all day long. They are smart dogs. They're telling me constantly where I need to be.
oh yeah, they're beauties.
Yeah.
Australian Shepherds, man, they're great dogs
Yeah.
and smart, and it's very
Yes.
smart.
And smart. Yeah. Well, so I haven't found that wave to ride. I would love to find the wave to ride. I mean, one of the things that I do that nothing as outrageous as your $1 million offer or Jim James uh
Jumping out of an airplane.
yeah, exactly. Causing a stir amongst the Chinese political elite.
Oh yeah.
But so 2012, when I launched the product at the beginning of the year, and I got hooked into, I was living in Hermosa Beach, and that's kind of where the brand was founded, and got hooked into beach sports, which is natural in those beach communities. And the organizers of a series of beach sports up and down the coast from San Diego to Santa Barbara. And so I was selling underwear on the beach.
Yeah.
All summer long. So to people who probably weren't wearing underwear, certainly didn't care about underwear, and were not thinking about buying underwear, probably didn't have a wallet with them. So I'm not sure how successful that kind of outrageous story is. But one of the things that also came from that year is Manhattan Beach has a very competitive 6-man volleyball tournament. And but it's as competitive as it is, it's also outrageous because all of the teams dress in costumes. So
Oh.
you've got these Amazon women and these 7-foot tall, guys, different teams. And the guys can be in like French maid costumes or bumblebees or dressed up as, pro wrestlers. It's hysterical. So Team Wood was born very early on. And I've got a group of guys that wear underwear to play volleyball in. And in fact, it's this weekend in Manhattan Beach, and Team Wood will be out there.
That's funny.
Yeah.
My daughter goes to college at UCLA. So.
Oh, there you go. So yeah.
Are you from California? Is that?
No, well, kind of from all over. My dad was Army, and so I was born in Arizona and lived in Utah. He was highway patrol in Utah, and then California was where I ended up going to high school and kind of formative years. And then I went to Boulder, Colorado for a year and skied probably more than I went to school. So I figured out I had to leave there. Otherwise I was never going to graduate, and I needed to check that box. So I transferred. I had good enough grades to transfer. I transferred to Santa Clara University in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. So that was fabulous. Moved in with Terresa, and Paula Therese.
No, there you go.
As a non-Catholic, so it was great education and so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, along the way of building a brand,
yeah,
you're hitting obstacles. What are some of the bigger ones?
Oh, well, we've talked about a lot of logistic ones. Those are definitely obstacles. I mean, that first year, I had a product. I mean, I pretty early on, I could look back on it and say, oh my God, that was crap. And I had people telling me it was crap. But the first 6 months of that year, I kind of took the online version of the Yellow Pages, and I drove around LA, walking into stores, and asked the owners if they wanted to see my underwear. And everybody got a chuckle out of that. And I've got customers that bought my first day out. In fact, this guy probably saved my emotional life that day, because he was my last stop. And John Noble from Douglas Fir down on 3rd in LA, he's like, oh yeah, bring it on in. And he made some he's a Brit, and he's made some great wisecracks about it. And he took the time to look at my product, and he placed an order right there. And I said, oh my gosh, I think I can fill that from my car. I went out and got it, and I brought it in, and it was fabulous. And I got in my car, and I'm like, I'm going to end on a high. I'm going to drive home and just celebrate. And so that was great. But I did trunk shows and also really early on in like May of 2012 when I barely had product, and I did a trunk show at the Equinox up in San Francisco, a gym club. And from there, I was driving all the way up to Seattle, and I stopped off into Portland, and I didn't know where I was stopping. I just kind of stopped and asked people where the men's stores were, and I happened to walk past this beautiful men's underwear store. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a special men's underwear store, and I walked in and I said, "Oh, hey, I'm Teresa, and I want to know if I can speak with the owner or the buyer, and can I show you my underwear?" And the guy's like, "Stay right here." And so he goes in the back, and he's gone for a little while, and he comes back out and he says, "Yes, Stephen will talk to you." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay." So Stephen comes out, shakes my hand, and I say, "Oh, I'm Teresa." And he stopped me. He's like, "I know who you are." And I thought, "Oh my God, how do you know who I am?" I mean, I didn't even know I was going to be here.
Yeah.
And so we walked back into his office, and he somebody had seen me in San Francisco at that trunk show that I was at, and called Stephen and said, "Hey, there's a new brand, blah, blah, whatever. The world is small." And he proceeded, sitting in his office, he took my box, my samples, he proceeded to tell me everything that was wrong with what I was doing. So I took it, and I packed up my stuff. I got in my car, and I cried all the way to Seattle. I didn't make another stop. But everything he said to me was right. It was spot on. It was absolutely, the right thing to hear, even though it was a hard thing to hear. And so I spent the last 6 months of that first year redoing everything: change the manufacturer, the packaging, the fabric, everything. The brand, I think the branding foundation was solid and has stayed. But otherwise everything else got, pretty much, out the window. So that was a hard lesson.
I was going to say, as much as you didn't know about logistics, you didn't really understand clothing manufacturing.
No.
So I would imagine that I remember when we first got into different businesses, we didn't know anything and wound up making just major mistakes. And it was, learning experience, but.
Yeah. Well, and then trying to figure out what you're going to do with the 20,000 pieces you've got in a warehouse that are crap. I mean, like, wow.
It's in your head.
Because now it's in your head.
And
yeah,
now
even if you've made a few sales, and you've gotten some good feedback, you now have all the negativity in your head. So you still have to sell it. You still have to, somehow package it and sell it. And, I did. Some of it I had to shed, but I, sold it and figured out how to start over. That was a tough one. The lessons with the showrooms, that was hard, because these showrooms require fees, and, you're paying them up front. And even if they say it's, a draw, it's not a draw. I mean, they're taking a fee, and, maybe you'll make some commission. Maybe they'll make some commission on top of that. So that was expensive. Most of my big mistakes have been people mistakes. People who I thought were going to make things easier for me, and all they did was put me to work more. And so those were hard lessons.
Yeah.
Because logistics, you feel like you can figure that out. There's books, there's people, there's resources, but people mistakes are really, really hard.
Especially when they're costly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think people mistakes, but also I think that when you start something and you feel good about it, and you start moving along, and you're going and going, and then you hit an expert, and it happened to us in the shaving business, it happened to us in a couple of businesses, and then you're moving and you've got all this inventory, and then somebody puts that into your head, that negativity, and all of a sudden you feel like you're just horrible at what you're doing.
Right.
And you feel like, oh my God, people are just going to hate this, and I've already sold it, and now I'm not going to get a second chance. And you run through this whole thing. And it happened to me. And I had to really sit down and say, well, this is where I'm at, and I've got to move forward. Yes, I can make changes, but I still have all this inventory that I have to sell.
Yes.
And I can't apologize to every single person that say I didn't know what I was doing. So it's I think that was I think that to me is one of the more difficult concepts to get over
Yeah,
personally.
yeah, absolutely. And especially when you are in front of your customers and you know everything that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
And you know where you're, and even if you know what your product is today, you know you've got improvements coming. You know, no matter how many years you've been in business, I hope you're still looking for improvements and
Sure.
advancements and all of that. And so what you've got today, you still have to sell, even though you know what's coming tomorrow is going to be better. But you can't sell tomorrow because
No.
tomorrow is going to have the same issue, you know. So and all you end up doing is just cycling and, you know, no sales, and you can't make tomorrow happen if you don't sell today. No.
To me, the mental aspects of entrepreneurship are the most difficult because you constantly have to fight against hitting you're hitting all these walls as you grow. And these walls are things that could put you out of business, right? Because what growth comes with cost. And
Yes.
so if you're growing inventory and you're growing sales, you've got to put more money out there. And if you don't have that capital, right, you're at a point where you go, oh my God, even if you've been in business for 3 years or 4 years, you got a steady income stream and you're constantly battling this, should I have done this? Oh my God, I might not make it out of this. And then
Right.
you're constantly battling. And to me,
Yeah.
that in a nutshell is what the difference between success and failure is in entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
because you're constantly battling that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy to think the decisions that you make every day, how many of them are existential. I mean, it really it is. I mean, like, you know, if I had said, "Oh, my product's crap," I mean, you know, you could stop and say, "Okay, well, I'm done," you know, because all my money's tied up in the inventory. I can't sell it because it's crap. Um, so yeah, it's phenomenal. Or, you know, or taking a bad advance from somebody on your inventory, or taking or factoring, you know, the wrong contract with somebody. um it's it's wild. I mean, and with inventory growth, to your point, I mean, with what I do, it's such a, you know, it's a foundation piece, right? It's the first thing you put on your body. It doesn't have to be complicated. And everybody's got to have their solids. They've got to have their black, white, and gray, and navy. Some people are like, navy's really far out there for them, but, you know, they still will do it sometimes for something fun. But then you've got to have your fashion. You've got to bring in the color and the prints and things, and those have to be seasonal. So you, as you grow your base, certainly my experience, I've got to have more and more and more of the core and keep that in stock and figure out how to keep it refreshed, while also now adding more and more seasonal. And, you know, the inventory is always ahead of the cash flow. That's, it seems, you know, just one of those things. So,
Yeah.
or it can be. Can't, you can make it that way.
Yeah, and that's another conundrum, especially in consumer products, is how, because you get to the point where you have built the paradox of choice, where you've got so much choice that you're essentially taking away choice from people.
Right.
And but I see that happen all the time,
Yeah.
and I've done it in the past where I've just kept, because you think you have to keep adding to grow, keep adding to grow, and it takes up capital. And then when that capital is just sitting there because everything's not
Right.
selling,
Right.
it gets a little scary. But
Yeah.
how many times have you had that moment where you thought, I don't want to do this anymore, or I can't do this anymore?
Oh my gosh. The first time it hit me for real was about the 5-year mark. And I'm just like, you know, I don't know what else to do, you know. And I was talking with some friends. I mean, a lot of my consulting world was up in Silicon Valley, so I knew many people up there, and tech founders and entrepreneurs, whatever. And I was talking with this guy, and he's like, Teresa, founder fatigue. That's what he called it.
Yeah.
Founder fatigue. Founder fatigue is a real thing. So what you're going through is a real thing. It's not fake. You can get through it if you choose to. But, you know, acknowledge it and figure out how you're going to, you know, break things up for yourself. And, I've had that conversation with myself, after 5 years. I mean, I think 5 and 7 and 11, we're on 12 right now.
Yeah.
Last year, and it doesn't even have to be associated with hard years. Sometimes it's around, you're faced with really difficult growth decisions, and you're like, I didn't know what I was doing when I got started. How am I gonna, continue to figure out the questions I have to ask when I don't know what they are. So but that's also, I think, for first time founders, um, I think you wouldn't be a first time founder if you knew how many things you didn't know. I think you have to enter this whole world just a little bit ignorant about what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, because if you knew what you were getting
Yeah,
into,
you'd be like,
you'd have to be
I
crazy.
I can have a much easier life and probably make enough money doing something else for somebody else. So yeah, so it's I mean, I didn't even I'm sort of making everybody aware about how much I didn't know. My total ignorance. I didn't even know there was such thing as apparel trade shows until my second year in business.
Oh, geez.
I mean, I've been in trade shows, technology trade shows, and I spent most of my consulting career avoiding trade shows because I didn't want to be the one going there. But I love them actually now. I found them, and they're so much fun. I don't go to Vegas though, and I
Yeah.
stopped going to New York. So the smaller ones, the regional ones, and Chicago Collective, they're fabulous, and I enjoy them.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad to tell people what you don't know, or or show what you didn't know, because that's the whole purpose of consulting or mentoring and all that. I built my first business when I was 27 years old, and exactly what you said. I was totally ignorant. I thought I knew exactly what to do, and it turns out I didn't know what to do, and it was 4 years of absolute hell. I worked 7 days a week for 4 years, and I just destroyed myself. I would have made more money working for McDonald's,
Yeah,
and at the end of it, it was just a failure of leadership, a failure of process management. And it was when I sold, I was relieved. But I took the money and I went to graduate school, got my master's degree, not because I thought that was going to solve my problems. I needed a reset. I needed to think
yeah,
differently, because I was just, I didn't realize how wrong I was until I really took a step back, and it was just amazing to me.
yeah, yeah. It's it and I think uh maybe the is it sadistic or masochistic? I don't know. For us first time founders, is that sometimes we'll go do it again, and we do know what we're getting into,
Masochism.
and we still choose to do it again.
Oh, I jumped into it again 5 years, 6 years later. I was, "Yeah, I'm going in."
Right, right,
But that
right.
turned out to be a lot different, because I think I learned, well, I still carry, honestly, I still carry all the thoughts of what I did wrong back then, and
Yeah,
especially when it comes, you had mentioned, we have about 5 more minutes, so real quick, you had mentioned, what some of the hardest things were human resource related, or hiring people that, let's talk about that for a couple of quick minutes, because I've done that a million times. Because I think, I, I, I find that if I don't really care if you know how to do something, I can teach you how to do that. I care more about your personality and your willingness to learn. But
right.
sometimes I've been fooled by that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the part that upsets me, is when I feel like I've been fooled, that somebody's just, telling me what they think I want to hear. I mean,
Right.
I don't interview well with people because I'm just very straightforward. I just tell you what it is. Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to be perfect for this job because of all the talking points you gave me back, and that's why you hire me. So it's it's crazy when you get those people who are really great interviewers who tell you everything that you want to hear, and you fall for it. And that's the hardest part,
Yeah.
really. What I found is, um, the people that have worked hardest for me are people who are just authentic. They're not trying to show off. They're just like, hey, here I can help you, or there I can't. And, it's just more real. And that tends to be, who I like to interact with anyway. So
Yeah.
maybe I gravitate towards those people. And my biggest people mistakes is when I've gone outside of that
Yeah.
feeling. And I'm like, oh no, but this person has the magic answer. There's a magic answer out there, and this person has it. And they're going to solve this whole problem over here for me.
Yeah.
I just know it. They solved it over here, so they're going to solve it there. So,
Yeah.
and you can't do that. It doesn't have, there's no magic. There's no magic. It's just hard work.
We have a question from one of the viewers said, do you think it was benefit or a hindrance to be a woman selling men's underwear?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think mostly benefit, because I can walk in somewhere and say, hey, do you want to see my underwear? And they're like,
yeah, if a
what
guy
did
did
you
that,
just
they'd be
ask me?
calling the police. Yeah.
And right. And and good natured about it. I don't because I'm working with independent retail primarily, and the buyers are the owners. There's such good humor about it, but they're also no nonsense. And if you can't prove that it is what it is, being female, male, whatever, is not going to help you. But I think it's mostly been a plus. And I can tell you actually where I've decided it's really a plus. So when I went into my first trade show in Charlotte Men's Show, years ago, and lots of new brands there, because everybody's trying it. Most of them don't come back the next season.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that had their wares out for this men's show weren't getting invited to the club, but I got invited to try the moonshine. So people are like, yeah, come sit down here with me. Let's have some moonshine. I'm like, all right, as long as I'm not going to go blind. And I know that was because I was female. I know it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, we're pretty much out of time. We ran a little bit over, but that's okay. It was a good conversation.
Okay. All right. Well, my apologies about the technology earlier.
Oh, that's okay. It happens. It just catches people off guard, and I wind up, stumbling through. But that's all right. Things happen. Yeah, it was great pleasure having you on there. We put all of your information for your website and your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Facebook, your YouTube, everything in the description of the show. So if anybody wants to go and buy and look and get in touch with Teresa, you can do it there. You have a podcast, right? Main Street Matters.
Yes. Just started, and I'm interviewing independent retail store owners and operators. Yes. And
yeah, that's great. Yeah. So we have that in there, as well as the website for that, and your episode page and all that. And you're also an award-winning best-selling author.
Oh Lords. I don't know if you could see the art on the wall behind me, but that's part of the illustration from Oh Lords, the book. Christine Steiner, very talented fashion illustrator, did that for us for the book. It's a fun read.
Yeah. So that's great. Anybody wants to pick that up, we put the links in there for where to buy it, and also that has a separate website. So all your information is in there. I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for talking to us. I think it was a healthy conversation for entrepreneurs, because you laid it all out on the line as far as what the problems are and you're still going strong now. It's been 12 years, right? 12.
Yes. Yeah. 12 years. Still working on it.
So that's fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll see you all next week, and we have some great shows coming up. And so we appreciate you tuning in, and we are out of time. And I'll see you again next week.